What's up, everybody? I'm Jesse from Mole and the Maker. Today we're going over how to build a very simple router sled. You can build this in less than an hour. It's extremely simple, but this thing will last you a super long time. Now, if you don't follow me on Instagram, TikTok, all the above, make sure you do that. Subscribe below to the YouTube channel. Appreciate the support. Let's get into the build. Now, if you're new to woodworking, you're like, why do I need a router sled? Well, one reason is to flatten slabs. If your planer is only 13 inches wide and you have a slab that's 15 inches wide, 16, 20, whatever it is, you need a router sled to flatten that down. There's other ways to do it as well, but if you have a small shop like mine, to me, it's the easiest way. Also, one of the messiest. So lay out what you need. The router base is going to show you the width of where you need your angle iron to be. So have your router base, 2 pieces of angle iron, and some pine. You also need screws, bolts, washers, and nuts. So make sure you have those on hand as well. So I start by laying out my angle iron and using my router base to see how far apart I need my angle iron to be. Once I have that dimension, I go over to my miter saw and I cut down that width with a piece of pine. Now, this was a 1x6 piece of pine. I didn't need it to be 5.5 inches wide, so I cut them down to about 4 inches. After cutting it down to 4 inches on my table saw, it's now time to attach them to the angle iron. These 2 pieces will go flush to the end of the angle iron, and you're going to drill 2 holes on each side, attaching it to that angle iron. So you'll actually have 8 bolts, 4 on one side, 4 on the other, that will help the angle iron not shift on you or move. I use a Bessey clamp to just clamp it together so it won't shift as I start to make my pilot holes into the wood. After boring out the wood, I take a smaller drill bit and start to do my pilot holes into the angle iron. Now, I just barely started the angle iron when the wood was set there. Then I take the wood out and I use some lubricant, and this is just gonna help my bit last longer and not destroy my bit. So I put a little lubricant on each spot and drilled out each hole. After getting the pilot holes done with this smaller bit, I take the bigger, larger bit that's going to be able to fit my bolt through the angle iron. After all those are bored out, I put a washer on my bolt, put it through the wood, and put it through the angle iron. You guys are probably saying, wow, those bolts are really long. Most of the stuff is stuff I already had on hand. I didn't want to have to run to the store. And so maybe I'll grind them off later, but right now they actually don't get in the way either way, so it doesn't really matter. Once all your bolts are in with the washers, go ahead and screw on your nuts. You can use 1 or 2 nuts. 2 nuts will just help secure it so that they won't loosen over time as easily, but you know, it's not a huge deal either way if you have to just go and tighten them once in a while, but they shouldn't loosen up on you really regardless. So next step is to go through and actually have the fence guides, right? This is gonna stop it from shifting side to side as you move your router across the sled. Now, these new pieces, I use the exact same dimensions as the first 2 to connect the angle iron. So it was about 6 inches and 1/8, and then I cut them down back on my table saw again to about that 4-inch depth. I went through and drilled 2 pilot holes in my angle iron. Now these are gonna sit vertical or perpendicular with the sled. It's actually gonna come down on the sides. After drilling the pilot holes, I lined up those pieces of pine I just cut on my miter saw, clamped them to the sled on one side, and then I drilled through the pilot hole on the other side and attached it with a fathead screw. I unclamped it on the one side and went through and drilled the next pilot hole. I attached that second fathead screw and that side is good to go. Repeat this process on the second side. Now that's pretty much it for the actual build. Now it's just, you got to finish it off with some paste wax. This is going to help the router slide back and forth along the metal. Also, it's going to make it so it doesn't scratch up and also glide along the bottom. So make sure you apply the paste wax on the inside and on the outside of the sled. This is just going to make it last better over time, smooth it out, things like that. Now, the last thing is, what do you put it on, right? So now that your sled is complete, you need 2 rails for this to slide on. Now you can build a bed. I've done that before in the past where I have an MDF board with some alder sides that I've jointed out that I know are flush and even with each other. That's a very simple way to do it. It makes it very flat, things like that. But then you have the problem of storing it. So if you have enough room and you can have that bed that you can just pull out all the time and you don't have to worry about it, that's perfectly fine. If you don't, then you can either keep just 2 pieces of lumber that you join up so you know that they're even with each other, whether it's some 4x4, 2x4 that you can clamp to your workbench. I've done that as well. The bed that I made with the MDF bottom and the alder sides, they're perfect, except when you get a super big slab. I've done that before. My most recent slab I had was too big, so I ended up having to use 2 2x4s clamped to the side and then having it run across the 2x4s. So there's multiple ways to build the rail system, whether you want to get a bed and make a bed system for it, or just clamp some 2x4s and do it that way. Either way works. Find what's best for you. If you have a preferred method and that I'm not speaking of, leave it in the comments. Let me know what you would do differently. If you haven't already, check out all the other videos I have here on YouTube. The ultimate backyard theater, the vintage trailer remodel, a clubhouse, whatever it is, make sure you go check it out. Let me know what you think about all my projects. I hope to see you guys next time.